Good afternoon, everybody. It's time to start, and it's time for me to introduce two tigers of contemporary ages. During the Salone del Mobile, Milano is not a city. It's an international platform where different disciplines are gathering together for visioning the present and probably the future. Please welcome on stage Marina Abramovic and Daniel Libeskind. Probably it's a matter of generation. That's why I call myself Cat, because I really think that you're two great tigers, and please don't eat me during this conference. We'll be here together for 1 hour for a specific reason, because the collaboration between the two of them is a special project where we can see a glimpse outside in the yard of University of Milano, which is the installation landscape rise counting exercise that you're working for the Contemporary Art Center of Geneva. We have a program which we have to start with Ms. Abramovic to introduce to our audience the topic of your new project.
I hate to sit and talk, so I have to stand. All right. First of all, before we even start, I'd just like to say to a few people thank you. Thank you to Moroso, who made this wonderful, the collaboration possible. Of course, Interni too. And then I would like to thank to the Loredana Putignani, who got this wonderful Brera students, who actually is counting rice literally 6 hours a day, which is a very big experience. And I would like to tell you a little bit how me and Mr. Libeskind met. It was really interesting. It was a literally blind date. I was invited to a very special event in New York, and they're doing these events for a long time. And the event is like to ask two people who never met before to choose 4 minutes of the different movies they like in their life. And nobody knows who's going to choose what. So I arrive, and I choose my 4 movies in 3 minutes each. And then Mr. Libeskind chose his 3 movies. And this was love on the first sight. It was amazing. We actually completely connect. I think because we come from East Europe, because we are immigrants. He's Polish, I'm ex-Yugoslav. I mean, this is so much in connection. So coming here to this project, it was almost natural kind of solution. It was nowhere to do differently. And the project is really simple and complex in the same time, but we can talk about project a little later. What we like to here to do is another kind of almost blind date. We both select certain images dealing with the subject of the Interni, which is feeding. What means food? What means you're eating or not eating? And how we can see, feeding. So I prepared some slideshow for you here. So let me see how it works. I press where? I never know to do this. Okay, so one of the first images I really make, talking about the food, I make my own bread. And this was time when I was very young and living with Ulay as my collaborator for 12 years. And we live in the car, we didn't have any money. And we live in just, from place to place. And this place was really taken in Sardinia. And we actually made the bread in Orgozolo. And so it's very Italian thing. But, I was the time of Tito, so we called the bread Tito. Then we have this, just all these rituals that we done. We spent in Australia for 1 entire year with the Aborigines in Central Australia. And what we done here, there was the only water to drink is from the water holes, and sometimes rain comes. So this is not the food, but it's water drinking. And very essential. So this is from the rock hole, which actually water is a little bit cleaner. Then we also make ourselves breakfast. And then again, Central Australian desert. And this was our floating breakfast. Consists of tea, 2 pieces of dry bread, and I think half apple, because nothing else to eat. Very romantic. Then, close up from floating eggs. I think it was a little porridge there too. I'm not sure, but coffee definitely. Built on the bush fire. Then we have, let's see, how we do. Next. Then, of course, I made one piece called The Onion. I love this domestic title, The Onion. Onion for me is like a life. You peel layers of onion and you talk about life and complaining about life. So, you know, when a wife is sitting home and, you know, the husband is cheating somewhere, who knows where he is, and she's crying, and then he comes home and she doesn't want to admit the weakness, so she says always, I just cut the onion. And that's the, okay. I press. Huh? I have to press there. So that was this video. Actually, it's just big onion, which I'm eating. And I hope there is a sound. I'm eating the onion and looking up. It's almost a religious piece for me. The eyes is blue. The sky is blue. I have red lipstick and red nail polish, which is not good for an artist to have. So I'm breaking these taboos. I'm eating the onion and complaining about my life. And, you know, to make this video was really hard because actually I have to eat 3 onions. First onion, the sound was not good. Second onion, something was wrong with light. So when I finally eat this third onion, I could not even swallow the food for months. Any sound?
I'm tired from changing planes so often, waiting in the waiting rooms, bus stations, train stations, airports. I'm tired of waiting for endless passport controls, fast shopping in shopping malls. I'm tired of more and more career decisions, museum and gallery openings, endless receptions, standing around with a glass of plain water, pretending that I'm interested in conversations. I'm so tired of my migraine attacks, lonely hotel rooms, dirty bed sheets, room services, long distant telephone calls, bad TV movies. I'm tired of always falling in love with the wrong man. Tired of being ashamed of my nose being too big, of my ass being too large. Ashamed about the war in Yugoslavia. I want to go away, somewhere so far that I'm unreachable by telephone or fax. I want to get old, really old, so that nothing matters anymore. I want to understand and see clearly what is behind all of this. I want not to want anymore.
Okay, complaints continue and the onion gets worse. All right, so next. Then, you know, I created something called private ecology in 1997, which is really to do with the food and talking about, you know, 50th century's icons and what these icons been eating, like, you know, like a pollen or bees, or what was the Last Supper of Leonardo. We don't even know, so I just presume. This is my recipe, how to make golden ball. I spent lots of times in monasteries in India, in Tibetan monasteries, and the monks told me, when you don't eat for 15 days, the first food you should have is to make a ball mix with the almonds, black coriander seeds, the peppercorn and white peppercorn seeds, pure honey, and rub everything in 24-karat gold. And this will really increase your memory. So that's the little recipe I've been still since then making since last 20 years. Then we have my own recipe. Here is just simple. It's milk, salt, and my own blood. Then we have then, you know, there was a part of my life was really unhappy. So I make these two portraits. One was portrait with the potatoes. It's really almost after Van Gogh. In Van Gogh painting, they're peeling potatoes. But here I'm peeling myself for a long period of time. It was taken in my house upstate in New York. And peeling potatoes is so important to me. It's a comfort food. It's where I come from. And we had millions of ways of making potatoes. And then, of course, portrait with the onion. And this was very reflective and thinking about life in itself. And the onions was placed on the Russian Pravda magazine, just bought that morning. And then I also done some researches, and I was so interested in Santa Teresa d'Avila. And Santa Teresa d'Avila, it was a saint, and they, you know, many witnesses said that actually she could levitate, and she could levitate in the church for many, many hours. And what I done here, I made the homage to Santa Teresa, and really, basically, I was specially focused on her diaries. In one of her diaries, they say, that Santa Teresa d'Avila was levitating all day in church, and she was very tired. And she went home, and she wanted to make a soup. And her diary said that she just started to make the soup, and then it's divine force, who can't she control, lift her up, and she started levitating while the soup was burning. So this is again the salt, the blood, and milk, but there is she cooking the soup. So I went to this monastery in north of Spain, where, you know, the nun lives for a long period of time, and exactly in the same place I create that ecstasy of Santa Teresa. Really meditative thing in the kitchen. You can do so much meditation in the kitchen. And this is the piece called Holding the Milk. So I stand there 3 hours holding this milk, and just a little drops of milk will fall down. That was it. It was about precision, concentration, and being in solitude. And then finally I levitate. I'm so sorry that I could not reel, because there was robes was removed with Photoshop, of course. But I spent quite a long time in that kitchen, in that position. And which I like about this piece is that she really got incazzata that she could not actually levitate and finish the soup before. She had to, you know, obey to divine force. Interesting. So another reflection of life and death. And then I had this lots of things with the spirit cooking. I really love spirit cooking. So there are recipes that you can't eat them, but they're poetical and you can think about. Breakfast, rose quartz. Lunch, obsidian. Dinner, tourmaline. Breakfast, night dreams. Lunch, daydreams. Dinner, evening dreams. Or, so the little drawings, essence drink. Mix fresh breast milk with the fresh sperm milk. Drink on earthquake nights only. And some drawings of the breasts. And then we have, look in the mirror for as long as necessary for your face to disappear. Don't eat light. And then we have my favorite, with a sharp knife, cut deeply into the middle finger of your left hand. Eat the pain. And then that's the pain. And then we have fresh morning urine, sprinkle over nightmare dreams. Simple and works. 3 glasses of water that ruby has been soaked for 3 days. 1 pomegranate. Very essential. On the top of a volcano, open your mouth. Wait till tongue become the flame. Close your mouth, take a deep breath. Basically, just take volcano in your body. Okay, there's too many, so we're going to do, this is, this is the good one. Take 13 leaves of uncanned green cabbage with the 13,000 grams of pure jealousy. Steam in the long time in the deep iron pot until all water evaporates. Eat just before attack. But 13,000 grams of jealousy, not bad. So, aphrodisiac recipe, that's too long. Oh my God, I don't tell you. Okay. Then what we have, this is too long. Fresh morning urine, sprinkle of nightmare dreams. Yeah, that's one we had. And against high blood pressure, hold the python on your lap while sitting on the block of ice. Really works. But you have to have ice and the python. Okay, let's see. And then we come to the rice counting exercise. So, which I like about rice counting exercise is, let me stop this for the moment, wait. Oh no, which can't. Which I like about some, is it's really simple, meditative, almost monk kind of exercise. Just look first the book. So, that's more or less my presentation. The counting rice is a ritualization of everyday life. You know, I'm trying to create this institute of the performance art long durational in Hudson, and the director is right here with us, Serge Leborn. We both wanted to create something unique and different, dealing with the material form of art, like opera, like a dance, like a music, like the film, like a video and performances. And we are interested how to create some kind of rituals that the public can come to see something which is long durational, but have to really relax themselves and came to the state of concentration. So one of exercise will be drinking water exercise. You know we are 70% of water. We drink water every day, but we drink it automatically. But just to drink water consciously, in slow motion, understanding how it feeds all your cells of your body, how the water gives you life, how water gives you energy, and calm you down. Same with the rice. You know, it's really hard to count rice and lentils together, or rice and sesame for such a long time, because our mind is not made that way. After, you know, our concentration is not, even for the kids, is not more than 30 seconds of Coca-Cola advertising. We are changing programs on television all the time. We are not following anything from the beginning to the end. Nobody's reading books anymore. We always texting messages. So here is that we have to learn something, which John Cage said a long time ago. We have to go beyond the boredom. We have to let be bored. Let's do nothing. Let's do one activity at a time to see how the mind can transit this threshold of, you know, want to be entertained to really can transcend into another space and dimension. And that's one exercise really works. So after the students, there are 12 of them going to go through this exercise for such a long time, we will learn from them what they learn. But anyway, this is more or less, and I'm giving to Libeskind my word. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Abramovic. The role of a good moderator is to be a discreet waiter, so please, Daniel.
I will also stand up, but only in deference to Marina. You might wonder why I would collaborate with any artist, but we didn't meet on a blind date, but I fell in love with Marina in her performance works and her artistic being much before, as many of you have. I think of her very highly because she's not even an artist. She's not belonging into, in my view, to the normal categories in which she's often defined as a performer, artist. She is really in a completely different space. And I love her and her work because it's dealing with the issues that are very similar to what I'm interested in. And, you know, we work on, I would say, the infra-spiritual level. We don't have to talk a lot. We don't have to discuss. But I understood immediately the rice counting performance as a certain discipline which had to do with space, which had to do with the mental order, had to do with a plan also of the future. So that's what we are building together, and that's what we are working on. Here are just some pictures that I put together. You know, when I thought about food, what do I think of? I think of Bosch. I think of, maybe I can regulate them. Okay, they go by themselves. I think of the films that which one, how do I do this? The green one. I think of the films that I've seen. I think of the temple in Jerusalem for the display of the bread. This is pretty accurate reconstruction. How strange, mathematical, and kind of Marina-like this object is anyway. You know, I think of, the Wolf of Wall Street and the obsession of the representation of lobster as a kind of an eagle flying in the wrong direction. I love the tales of La Fontaine because they always deal with the big animals, small animals, and rodents. And that's the fairy tales really are also about food, because that's how we learn how to eat anyway in Eastern Europe, through fairy tales. And we see them in America, actually, with championship of eating metal. Here is Woody Allen, another. This is real. This is not like a Wolf of Wall Street. This is another kind of wolf. Of course, we talked about children's stories. We talked about having tea, having something spiritual. To me, that's really, in a way, Marina is. Aula's always with the rabbits around. And she already referred to what do we know about Passover? What do we really know about how food is brought? How is it processed? Where it comes from? How it comes to us? And of course, painting, particularly Chaim Soutine, really was the first one to understand Rembrandt's message in his paintings. Of course, cinematically, we know food, but we also live in a time of depression where a lot of people don't have food. There are soup lines. I was just in Paris. I saw large soup lines standing. So we have to think of food as Marina is in a very different way. I was there. That's important because I do love eggs. That's for sure. It's my favorite food of all foods. And the depiction in particularly contemporary painting is very interesting. To what extent the figurative taste of food cannot be eroded even by conceptual, spiritual magic. Of course, eating in other parts of the world, because we have projects all over the world. And here in the Ambrosiana, we can also see a very particular sensibility of food. The Roman vomitorium, which you all know, which is something that has kind of disappeared. It is now in a secret space, but it is also part of architectural language. Eating of one's own shoes, this is always something that's stuck in my mind, because it's not just a deconstruction of the shoe, but it's a deconstruction of attitude of the intestinal sort of tract, and of course against nature, because as we know, art is against nature and God is for nature, and art tries to speed up nature and God tries to slow it down. So we see the paintings, particularly of the rich societies of the Dutch. We see the mythology of philosophy born in cafes. We see the magic of another kind of face that brings us into worlds that we don't quite fully understand. And we also live in a proliferating world where the repetition of the image has created an aura, the opposite of what Walter Benjamin expected. The mechanical reproduction has created an aura of taste, which you can also see in these fantastic Dürer, the apple, the snake, and Marina just referred to the snake in her aphrodisiac recipes. Of course, all of Gaudi is based on chickens, as you know. He used the chicken to create the complex forms. He used the chicken literally to enforce a spiritual sense of angelic in the Sagrada Familia, and certainly the alchemical, the earth eating the sun, the blood, and working also here at the expo with Vanke Corporation. I thought all about Chinese, the social eating in China, the kibbutz. I lived on a kibbutz for a long time, and I was forced to eat in a horrible environment, kind of communist environment. And here it is also a very interesting photograph of sense, of taste, of smell. So, and of course, Passover, the Jewish holiday, Easter in here is coming, which is also a ritualized sense of presentation of memory as a future liberation of the audience of the table. So we've got a lot in common, and I only have to tell you that there's no more fun person, artist, thinker, a spiritual kind of leader that I've ever worked with, more fun than Marina. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Libeskind.
By the way, I showed the last picture of the mayor of New York, Mayor de Blasio, eating pizza with a fork and knife. It was on all the front pages of all the newspapers in New York that he's a terrible mayor. He's not really the mayor of the people, because mayor of the people would eat the pizza with his hands. But he said his grandparents were in Sicily where they ate with fork and knife. I don't know. Are there any Sicilians here? Is that true? Yes? Okay, so he's a real mayor.
Okay, the main topic why we are here is to talk about food, but as everybody watched now, that behind food there's many and several meanings. And your creations has been food for the mind for almost everybody that they came here gathering together to listen to you. Can you describe what is food for the mind to you? Let's address the question first to Ms. Marina.
Food for the mind is everything what you want it to be. You know, it's you have to figure out what really works for the mind. In my case, I think it's the best thing that we really should relate to the some ascetic, the traditions from the past in different cultures. And I think the non-eating, it's incredibly important to have actually absence of food for a certain period of time, that the body can rest, the body can actually, kind of have the vacation from the digesting constantly heavy food in the stomach. And once you don't eat 1, 2, 3 days, the body produces acids, and you get really dizzy and blood sugar go down and you have headache and it's very annoying. But if you really control yourself and with willpower and pass these 3 days, you realize the body say to you, but okay, I'm not producing acids because there is no food coming. So the entire energy will go into your brain. And the moment when energy goes to brain, you feel this incredible lightness. You feel like you're not pulled by gravitational force into the ground, and your mind is incredibly clear. And I think that's the food for the mind.
Thank you.
It's a very difficult question to answer, because in a way the mind is renting the space in the soul. The soul is the owner. The mind is only an occupant. And then we are the bodies that are sort of the surrogates on top. Spiritual food, for me, I think I have one in New York. It's uni. I love uni. Because whenever I eat uni, and I don't eat it very often because it's very expensive and it's not very often that it's really, I feel that it's something really, it's something fantastic, because I don't like the taste, I don't like the texture, I don't like the color, but it makes me very creative. I think good thoughts when I have uni. But spiritual food is really, I think it's false to associate it only with a physical ingestion, because we can be full of something else.
Like a sunlight.
Like sunlight.
Exactly. There is this wonderful Vagana spirits in the rock paintings in Australia, which actually they present the spirits without mouths because they don't need to eat. They just eat sunlight. And that's possibility. But also talking about food, I think gold is good food. 24-karat gold is given to the young babies of 9 months in India, just mixed with a little milk, because that will really go into your body and refresh memory cells. And actually, there's such a rare metal in our body. They will never leave, because we have every metal in our body, but gold is one very rare one. And so the gold is another thing that activates your brain cells. So talking about spirit food, we are not talking about pizza or pasta here.
But you're right. But in a certain way, when we think of the Plato's cave, in his writings, the cave, the idea of knowledge, we seldom associate it with the mouth. We always think of it as a visual image of a cave of darkness, and then there's one ray of light, and the people are sitting looking at the wall and seeing all the reflection of light. But I often thought that Plato might have actually thought that the cave is the mouth. The cave, because everything comes from the mouth, language, philosophy, and that the notion of shadows, and light is also related to the mouth. The mouth doesn't get a very good reputation because people say you have a big mouth or it's just the mouth. But the mouth is really almost, all the space, not just the space of taste, but language. Everything is kind of not really concentrated here in the brain, but more in this organ as I see it. And so it's very interesting to think of the philosophical issues of spiritual food really, to me, in a different cave, not to look for it in the brain, but something that we can actually see when you look at a mirror even.
And I also think it's really important to have small ritual just in your own home. Try to eat food with closed eyes and not talking to anybody. Just eat very simple food, just even without any ingredients like, I don't know, cucumber or whatever, the slice of apple, but with closed eyes, and is completely something else. You nourish much faster than actually talking and doing all other activities and eating so much. The spirit food is a different type of food.
I have a question regarding your mouths. Our mouths are like barrier and gateway between our inner bodies and the world around us, and how we relate to food is a symptom of our relationship with the world. What is your own interaction with food, and how has it changed through the different stages of your lives?
Can you start, please?
Well, I grew up in Poland in the communist poverty. So I associate food with one thing. Whenever you went shopping, I was accompanying my mother, you always added to whatever you were buying, let's say bread, you added the word for the sick. Everything was for the sick, because if you would just ask for bread, sorry, we don't have any bread. If you ask for a ham, we don't have any ham. But if you added the word for the sick, you would maybe get a slice, or maybe it would appear actually from other. So to me, food in general was associated with sickness. That it's for the sick. And true, in my memory in Poland, the food was very reduced. There were no shops. The shops were empty. You had to walk around with an empty bag in case there is something. And I'll tell you a very ironic story. When we left Poland, the zloty was worth nothing. So my parents could, so they tried to buy something when we were going to Israel. What can you buy? And there was one store that had several, 12 or 15 jars of honey. And so they bought these jars of honey because that's the money they could spend on this. And we took it to Israel, and that was the most ironic. Since Israel has its own honey, and people thought, how strange to bring Polish honey to Israel. So actually it went to waste because we didn't like honey. Nobody in Israel wanted honey. So it's kind of really an emblem of my idea of Poland and liberation.
And now?
Now I'm very lucky because my wife Nina, who's here somewhere, she's a fantastic chef. She cooks amazing meals. We come back at 11 o'clock, from our studio in New York very often, and she does 4 or 5 course meal. I mean, it's not Sette Stelle even. It's kind of in the stellar. It's not Michelin level. It's higher. So I'm very lucky.
What do your kitchen looks like?
I tell you what it looks like. There's a kitchen. I sit in front of it and I watch Nina cook. I'm not very liberated, but because I don't know anything about, and I actually don't like cooking. I don't like cooking. I think it's not part of my personality. But I love to discuss, and Nina is always educating me what she's doing. And I probably could write a very good phenomenological study of how one person with 2 hands can do a job for 2 or 3 chefs.
And your kitchen?
Oh God, let's start first from the ex-Yugoslavia. It was really fantastic, so similarity. The Russians will make the washing machine for the clothes was never used in Russia to wash the clothes. It was washed to make vodka. I mean, that was with potatoes. I mean, that was one thing. Second, everything was, in a kind of, we always would get things in a big amounts. First, they would come, the grandmother screaming and say, it arrived, and we don't know what arrived. Toilet paper arrived. So we would buy the enormous quantity of toilet paper, which was served for 3 years. We don't know what to do with this. Then will arrive the lamps. Then will arrive the sour cabbage. Then will arrive potatoes. Then was a big thing to buy half pig on the credit of 6 months, and you keep the pig in a bathroom. Where else you can pick the pig? So it was all this quantity, and nothing have to be waste, and every kind of amount of food was made have to be eaten. And that was something that really radically changed now in me, that I don't need the quantity. I don't eat all this food. And I don't, hardly cook. But when I cook for friends, but I don't cook for myself, so I would just go somewhere and eat. But, this whole habit with food is changed. And I have this incredible desire lately for the comfort food. I'm crazy about baby food for some reason. So in the evening when I come out of meetings and work and I'm so tired, I would just, boil the milk and make baby food.
But, it's interesting because if I think of where we, if you have to have this image, where we lived in Poland, our kitchen was very small. The kitchen had an old stove, old Polish with a real coal, probably like yours. But because the water connection was only in the kitchen, we also had the bathtub in the kitchen. So the kitchen was both where you take a bath, because that was the source of water, where you cook your food, and it was a very small space. So often when people were cooking, people were in the bathtub as well. And that changed my idea of function, because we are very used to this 1920s propaganda of health, of food, but really people don't really live like that mostly in the world. They don't live in that world. So the idea of functions, how to divide or coordinate functions, is kind of very interesting to me, that you could very successfully, and I was, 11, 12 years old when I left Poland, I was always taking baths or given baths while food was being cooked, and the same oven cooked, the coal to heat up the water. I think it's interesting because not everybody is lucky to live in Milano.
Yeah, Italian relation food is complete religious, is another level. I know that. In America, you have these super modern kitchens with everything you can imagine, and you have the gentleman coming from the work and just make phone call and have the home delivery. Nobody ever to use the kitchen.
You're right. When we were reconstructing our apartment, I asked about the kitchen. Most people in my office said, you don't need a kitchen, you just need a telephone. Why do you bother with a kitchen? Because everything can be delivered within a few minutes, so why bother?
Another thing is incredible in America also, that you have these home deliveries. You just, you just say, you look on the internet what you want, let's say tomatoes, and you order them and they arrive in less than 1 hour. And then the next time you want to order tomatoes again, the computer already remembered the tomatoes from before, and they ask you the same tomatoes or different kind. So it's like you're kind of talking to computer. You never even touch the food, which is really alienation, which is pretty serious.
Thank you to internet. Some types of food may be symbolic from a religious viewpoint, and you quoted many times religion in different aspects. But food preparation is sometimes thought to be sacred as well. What does food preparation mean to you?
We're really talking about food here in the most direct way. Can we do a little bit more like transcendental?
Yeah, let's do it. Okay.
What means preparation food for me? Yeah, I don't know. I just, go. First I start with garlic. In my kitchen it's very simple. First you take at least half a kilo of garlic and then anything else.
I've often thought that artists, for example, writers, the greatest writers are famous for what they wrote. Let's say Proust, the research of time, or James Joyce, my favorite author, or Bruno Schulz, or whatever, Alberto Moravia. But to me it would be much more interesting if we could follow the novel of a person's life. I think that the Proust's really daily life as an invalid was probably more interesting than his literature, because the literature is a kind of, so we're talking really about kind of an everyday life. How can we get to it without the veneer of art interfering to see how people really eat, what do they really think, how do they really taste? But I think that it's interesting because it's about also the organs of sensation, because smell, I think, is the only completely enclosed sense. There is no argument with smell. You can argue with vision, you can argue with taste, you can argue with touch, but you cannot argue with smell. And yet, it is one of the things that has been left out, except in Marina's performance with the onion. And I don't know how close the audience is to you, actually.
You can smell onion even on the video. But you know, I visited 2 restaurants, one in Paris and one in Antwerp, I think. And the both restaurants are actually, you have to eat in the dark. I don't know if you have such a restaurant in Milano. And it was really difficult for me. I have to visually see the food. And it was served in dark. I can feel the taste, but something was missing, you know. The visual part of the food is kind of important. Because you first see food, then you can close eyes and you eat slowly. But if you just never see the food, what you're eating, I think it's almost impossible.
Do you have recollections of any food smells in your lives connected to, you were talking about that missing the visual part is something weird according to food. And what about olfacts?
Well, the most shocking, and I've built several shopping centers, one in Switzerland, and I went there, and it was incredible smell of like baguettes, French, you know, and then there was a chocolate, so it was incredible. And then I discovered, to my complete chagrin, that it is all artificial, that all the smells of food in a very sophisticated 21st century shopping center are produced through a technology. So we think there is a bakery, but there's absolutely no bakery. It's just industrialized food with smell being pumped in. So the notion that you're raising, you know, what is the authentic sense? I think it's very difficult to you know, we would have to talk about what is the authentic.
You know, I just want to say, like in America, when you want to sell the apartment, they told you immediately to buy this kind of smell, that you can smell like the fresh bread just been baked, because they will feel like home and the people buy the house. It's incredible.
I didn't know. You can even do it just.
Yeah, just to pretend this is to just bake the bread.
You know, the smell. You know, I have to say that in Poland, I remember all the food was gray. I don't remember any food. It was just, maybe it was in the bathtub, or I don't know, it was just great. But when I came to Israel, the Mediterranean, I suddenly discovered that food had color, it had taste. And that was before I discovered that taste as Dutch food, which we buy in the United States, which is all grown in industrial sort of. So, and then when I come back to Italy, I wonder, it's so fantastic, actually. The food actually has smell, which is, it's not packaged the way it is packaged in many parts of the world. So there is a lot to be said about the real experience and a secondary experience.
I just want to say my first memories of the food is not the food, it's the smell of the fresh burnt coffee. My grandmother would take green beans and she will first roast them, and then she will make this cup of Turkish coffee. And it was a Friday, we will look always, of course, in the Destiny, and you know, she will say the black man is coming from the north and blonde is going from the south, and it will be money or whatever. And there was this memory of rituals and coffee drinking so strong. But I really think that we should talk to the audience a little bit more, because now we're discussing this very abstract food, but I'm sure there's some questions. What do you think?
Yeah, of course, if
Let's
you're
do
allowed
it.
to open up to the
I am
audience.
opening. What about you? Let's open and see other aspects.
Let's do it. Please raise your hands, and then we will
ask
help you
us
with it.
any question. This is a perfect moment. Anything.
Grazie.
We need microphone.
Non abbiate timore dell'inglese, perché c'è la traduzione nell'eventualità.
Io parlo italiano e anche Libeskind parla italiano, parliamo italiano.
L'applauso liberatorio della lingua madre.
Sì, e con molti errori, mi scusa.
Mentre aspettiamo una domanda, ve ne faccio un'altra io. Siamo ospiti di Interni. Questa rivista quest'anno compie 60 anni. Ha più anni alle spalle del Salone del Mobile che in questa settimana si celebra. Qual è il vostro rapporto con Milano e con il racconto che di Milano fa questa rivista da oltre 60 anni? Cominciamo da Daniel.
Well, I'm a huge propagandist for Milano, because, you know, my family, my son Lev Libeskind runs Libeskind Architettura and Libeskind Design. My grandchildren, I think they're here somewhere in the audience, probably. And I moved to Milano really many years ago. I lived here only for 3 years, but I moved with no motives. You know, I have no money, I had no job, I didn't do anything. I just came to Milano. It's a kind of irrational action of loving a place. And I'm not Italian. I have no Italian origins. I have no Italian background. I'm just someone who found Milano appealing to me in many secret ways. And I think this is a city, and of course, Interni and the stylization of Milan in history, not only today, but going back a long time, is kind of a phenomena of art. And I love this city because it's a very strange city. And everybody says, when I say I live in Milano, also in New York, they say, why do you live in the ugliest city in Italy? Don't you want to live in a beautiful place? But I think it's a secret city with secret paths, and I think Gilda Boiardi, Interni, all these things, you meet the most fantastic people, you have a chance to do things, and how lucky can I be to be involved in city life and other projects here?
You know, for me, Milano was especially important from the beginning of my career, because in 1975, the first time I came to Italy to do the performance work was in Milano. And this was the first time going out of something very restricted, like in those days, being in Yugoslavia with not much possibility to travel. And Milano public was great to me. And then generally after that, I started working in Italy. And it was very, very important, this entire encounter with the Italian public, who are emotional, who are incredibly supportive to my work since ever. And I always come here, I feel like home, and it's a wonderful city.
Qualcuno ha trovato il coraggio di fare una domanda? Please.
I would like to ask a question about taste. If we were talking about the food before. Thank you very much. I would like to ask a question about taste. If everyone between us, we have a taste for our food, it's because we have our culture, our memory. So what do you think about the point of view of our architect, and artist, of the taste of our food, and also the taste of our work? Sorry, I'm not clear. Just the question about our taste as an attitude. How do you feel about your taste, and how it's been made? Just like why you have a taste like that? Sorry.
Let's do this more simple. Let's start again.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the first question?
Yeah, sorry. It's just only a question. It's simple, like who give you your taste, and how you find your taste. Just for make me clear and make every student clear. So how can we learn to get our taste in the future? Thank you very much.
Really good question, yeah.
Well, I can only say that, taste is, if you look for the geometry of taste, to me it's concave. Taste is always concave. You put something into a concavity, very different from hearing, very different from everything else. It's a concave, series of concave disappearances. Now, it's a good question about the taste, because most people who have ever written or told us about their taste who referred, as you said, to history. I mentioned Marcel Proust. He recalled a taste of something he tasted as a young boy, and this taste brought him to time itself, to give him the opening to research the time past. And I would like to be kind of the opposite of Proust. Taste something which I have never tasted, where I don't have any habit for it, where I am actually frightened. And by the way, I did taste many things I was frightened of in many places of the world, where they told me, don't taste this, it's even dangerous. But to cultivate a taste that is a taste of the future is not to be dependent only on the taste you've had before. How do you do it? I don't know. You have to be open-minded. I like tasting things as I travel around the world.
But Daniel, I was thinking he was more thinking of taste in architecture. Is that right? Or is it food?
Well,
or is it also related to architecture?
It's taste in general.
Architecture, environment.
Look, Salvador Dali said he hates Le Corbusier and all modernist architecture because it's like a big piece of Swiss cheese, and Corbusier was Swiss. But every building has a taste, definitely. And when we come to a box, to me, it's not neutral. It's filled up with a lot of tastes. But I don't try to design architecture by taste. I tried not to design it with my taste, but design it in such a way that it is open to a different sampling of possibilities. Of course, I have a very strong idea of what I want to do. Otherwise, I wouldn't do the work I do. But it's definitely not about taste. Taste in this case, I don't think we have a taste for color. I don't think we have a taste for geometry. It's either geometry, it's not geometry. It's either red or it's not a color. So it's difficult to answer you a metaphorical question which uses taste as the symbol of creativity. Very difficult, because we get right back to kind of 19th century, what you like and what I like.
But I like the question because it's difficult. So, to me, it's, again, let's think about the taste. Let's think that in some possible way we have some kind of DNA inherited of our taste that we're not even aware, and we develop later on, and we think come from somewhere else, but actually it's deep down. I remember that I was surrounded by so much objects in ex-Yugoslavia. We was collecting everything, was full of shit. And I remember that I had this need of reduction and taking away and weigh things and making it more simple, till I come that I'm the most comfortable in literally empty room, that is nothing there, that is just things are functional. One thing I detest was always this coffee table books. I could not hand it or stand them, because they're always kind of decorative element, and nobody ever look at them, and just sitting on the table and collecting the dust. And then so many objects that you collect during the life, and you just never even look at them or never use them, and they become part of this kind of landscape of your life. And then I got really crazy about this Japanese architecture, because I was thinking these guys, they don't collect anything. But it's not true. In the gardens, they have these huge storage houses. We're full of stuff. But then when they come spring, they will go to the storage and take spring vase. And they bring spring vase, and they will very much worship spring vase. When they come the winter, spring vase will go to the storage, and they will bring the winter vase. So there will be selection of the certain objects. And talking about and then, in my work, I always start by unbelievable chaos. It's like not even Baroque, it's like a Rococo. It's hundreds of things. And then I reduce, and then, in one point, when it's almost nothing there, then I say, oh my God, this starts to be interesting. So I know there is a statement which actually starts from Sufis saying, less is more. I have my own statement which I say, let's have more and more of less and less.
Well, it's funny that we love each other's work, that I really think the opposite, because I think the more is the less. The complexity, in a way, is the simplification of the world. Because if you think about reality, chaos, you mentioned about chaos and order, we all prefer order, but order is nothing that we can experience in reality. It's actually the opposite. There is no order in reality. You could just go into any science. We know in the scientific disciplines that they accept that the world is not a linear world. It's not even our world. It's a multiverse which doesn't have any kind of causality that we know about. So we are actually, in the question of taste, talking about free will. Do we believe that we have free will? Now, greatest scientists in the world, like Stephen Hawking today, Albert Einstein just a few years ago, said they don't believe in free will. They believe in determinism, that everything is in the DNA, that reality is not up to us. We are just part of it. But my favorite writer, Jewish writer, Isaac Bashevis Singer, said, we have free will because we have no choice. So in a way, that's the dilemma. It's the dilemma of free will. And it's interesting because you interpret it in a very, I think, very radical manner, because you're an artist who got rid of everything in a real way, as opposed to painters, sculptors who still have a kind of material substructure. But to me, you're a very complex artist spatially, because on the micro level, there is incredible amount of complexity in your work, much more. So like in a millimeter of your work, or centimeter of your work, there's more complexity than a millimeter of a basilisk or something. So because people are doing something with it.
But it's interesting that what you talk about cows, because we should definitely include cows in all this discussion. The Francis Bacon said that he only can create from cows, because in cows there is everything there. Is like the seed of the universe and the new ideas. So we have to start with cows. There's no way out.
And we may end up in a non-Cartesian. I hope we will end up one day in a totally non-Cartesian space. We're still living in a dream of a Frenchman living in the 1600s, who created the grid. One of the greatest achievements of the world is the creation of the grid. He created the idea that you can subdivide reality into equal, neutralized units, which you can fill with anything you want. But I think we are moving in other directions, because, for example, we are now appreciating animals for the first time. The animal has come back. We suddenly realize the animals not just should have rights, but Jacques Derrida wrote a book, are we animals really who are just controlling other animals? Pretty radical stuff.
But you know that the title of this lecture is Eating Out. We are completely out of this line. We are not eating out. Look, eating out.
It's hard.
Let's have another question, please.
Sì, volevo sapere se c'era un ricordo della vostra vita legato a un sapore particolare e appunto quale cibo vi ricorda qualcosa, un momento vostro.
You really want us to talk about food here? We try to escape all the time. Fresh cooked potatoes, that's it. You?
But we don't have to discuss food in this way, because by bringing food into this really non-metaphorical sense, we are reducing even eating, because eating is not about the mouth only. It's about, as you said, it's about many things. So, and food of life, right? Food of life. Those are the greatest. The Mass, the Catholic Mass, is based on taste, on something to do with your mouth. So we're also speaking about something that is highly spiritualized, and where the discussion really eating out is really out of this world. What do you eat? I know that you eat really space food. No, really, you don't eat regular food. You eat food from outer space, correct?
Correct.
So that's a completely another.
But I would like, let's because we run through this aphrodisiac recipe. Maybe you should read this aphrodisiac recipe, but I don't have the control. You have to go to my how we can go this? I don't know. Is
Potete
anyway
tornare alla presentazione della signora Abramovic.
call aphrodisiac recipe? I don't know. But anyway, we can talk till we find this. Any other question?
There's a question.
Io avrei una domanda in realtà per la signora Abramovic. Vorrei sapere se anche o meglio come è presente il rapporto tra il cibo e la morte nelle sue performance, perché mi vengono in mente alcune in cui credo che ci sia uno stretto legame, come in Balkamin Baroque, che lei pulisce le ossa di animali.
You see, but again, I take the bones as a symbol for something completely different. As I said, performance is a tool to say different things and different concepts. Balkan Baroque piece was especially related to the war in ex-Yugoslavia, but in the same time, I wanted to create the picture who is not just related to that war, but to be actually the metaphor for anywhere, any war, any time, any place. So everybody knows that we can't wash the blood. This is something that you can never be washed. So I use something like 2.5 tons of the cow bones full of blood, and I wash them for 6 hours a day for 6 days, I think, until the worms come out and was smell, and it was very, very difficult. It was nothing to do with the food. It was to do with this idea of the impossibility of crime. And I was very much related to the Dalai Lama's statement, which I wanted to remind everybody, which he said one day, only if you learn to forgive, you can stop killing. And that washing bones was, questioning that possibility. And then also I made another work which I actually created a skeleton. Exactly, I made my size. And that skeleton I put on my, nude body, and I breathe. The skeleton is breathing, so it's like you're really seeing your interior body and your outside body, and really connect yourself with the notion of mortality, dying, decay, and so on. And it was very interesting to include that in everyday life, because only when you really understand mortality and temporality of human being, you can actually live full life. And in that sense, I use the blood, the bones, and skeletons.
Well, in architecture, the question of mortality would be the question of foundations. Because every building has a dark part, which you don't see, and the building is dependent on the foundations. And by the way, in my project for Ground Zero in New York, is the first time people will be able to see a foundation which is actually living, which is actually stabilized in a very complex way, because foundations are meant not to be, to be put on something on top of. For people to see a foundation that is alive rather than a dead foundation, I mean, we're used to dead foundations. We see all over grounds where the foundations have died. But I think when you come to New York, probably in June, when the museum opens, and you see that I was able to preserve, with a lot of difficulty, what is called a slurry wall, which is a foundation supporting the site, which is not covered up by beams and other structure, but is exposed. So it's kind of opened to something in the darkness, which you can never possibly see, a foundation. And I thought that's very important for people, because it cannot be simulated in any other sense. Foundation cannot be simulated in the mind, on a computer, in virtual reality. You have to be able to see it, and actually even to touch it, to get the sense what a 1,776-foot high tower building looks like underneath. How deep in the bedrock is it standing, and is it very deep or is it not very deep? I think this will change people's idea also of high-rise buildings, because we've never, only constructions work go to the foundations of anything in building. So to me, the question of what you said of the ultimate dimensions in architecture have to do with something which we never see, which is forbidden. It's a taboo. And usually the foundations are, you have a ceremony where you put something in a foundation and then you cover up the foundation. But I thought in the case of these terrorist attacks, it's important to expose it, not to cover it up, so that it is open for people to see continually.
The skeleton of destruction, really.
In a way it is. In a way it is.
So I just want to, somebody was asking about my favorite food. I just read you this. 7 days without eating, 7 days without talking, 7 days without sleeping, 7 days without sexual intercourse, 7 days not reading or writing, 7 days not watching television, 7 days not answering telephone, fax, now I should add internet. On the 7th day, take a bath in almond oil, eat 1 coriander seed, 1 almond, 1 spoon with royal jelly. Engage in intercourse with a partner who went through the same process for 3 days and 3 nights. Drink each other nectar, postpone climax until the last hour before sunrise on a 3rd day. Do it, it's great.
We couldn't expect a better end. Thank you, Marina Abramovic. Thank you, Daniel Libeskind. Thank you for sharing your time here at Interni. And we were supposed to talk about food. We talked about religion,
we talk about
symbols,
sex too.
life,
we
sex,
end with
design.
Sex,
yeah, that's the best way to end. Thank you, everybody, and enjoy Salone.
Thank you.